Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. The Senate is back in session, and as we move closer to Election Day, Congress and the White House have failed to reach a deal on a coronavirus relief package more than a month after the last one expired. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says he will force a vote sometime this week on a GOP-led proposal. The Senate left town on recess weeks ago with no deal. Their version of the bill is expected to be around $500 billion. That is far less than what Democrats are hoping for. Top Democrats are already calling that initiative dead on arrival.
This bill will not pass. Go back to the drawing boards. Do a real bill. Speaker Pelosi and I are willing to meet you halfway, but not with this bill, which is not just skinny, but emaciated.
Meanwhile, President Trump is in Jupiter, Florida, speaking about what he says are environmental accomplishments. It's happening on a day where parts of California are seeing record heat at 121 degrees, and parts of Colorado are bracing for snow after temperatures dropped 70 degrees in just 24 hours. All of this as the campaign season enters the final stretch, with both the Trump and Biden campaigns adding an increasing number of events to their calendars. For more, let's bring in Nikole Killion and Anita Kumar from Washington. Nikole is a CBS News correspondent, and Anita is a White House correspondent and associate editor at Politico. Welcome, Nikole and Anita. Nikole, let's start with the Senate Republicans' proposal. Why are they pushing forward if they still have not reached any agreement with Democrats? And is the White House concerned about signing a bill before the election?
Well, keep in mind that a number of key provisions of the previous coronavirus relief package have expired, most notably unemployment benefits, which lapsed at the end of July. So there is a real sense of urgency and desire to do something, but both sides kind of keep talking past each other, and you kind of heard it in those sound bites as well. Republicans are trying to put forth this effort like we're trying to take control of the problem, but, Democrats really believe that there should be something more sweeping than what Republicans are putting on the table. So both sides are trying to show like they are doing something on this front. Senator Mitch McConnell is pretty much putting the onus on Democrats, saying, look, we've put forth a number of plans. They keep blocking it. So we're just going to put something on the table now. As you heard Senator Schumer say, though, again, they want something more sweeping. They see this as emaciated, that this is just an attempt. And more than likely, if this bill does fail at the end of the week, certainly I think Republicans feel like at least they're putting Democrats back on defense.
Well, Anita, I want to talk about the president's speech in Jupiter. What are the accomplishments that he is pointing to when it comes to the environment? And is he expected to address the issue that we know is impacting people in Florida, the pandemic?
He did speak just to the environment, really, and then just had some of his sort of regular talking points. The big announcement that he made today, I guess you could argue it's not so big because we expected it, but the announcement he made today was that he was extending the moratorium on offshore drilling in Florida, which has been a huge deal for Florida for a number of years, and really a huge deal all up and down the coast. So this was expected. There was already a partial moratorium on one side of the state. He extended it to the other side. He has done the same for some of the other states along the East Coast. He didn't go all the way up. So you saw today Virginia saying, hey, we'd like to be included in this as well. This is a really interesting situation for the president. He has supported offshore drilling in the past, and he's kind of gone back and forth. So you saw Democrats immediately today say they don't believe that this is going to stick, that he's only doing this because we're so close to the election. And this is something that people in Florida want. But why do we, how can we trust him? Because he has gone back and forth. The president also talked about, as you mentioned, some other accomplishments more in some vague ways. But this was his real goal today, was to talk about offshore drilling.
Well, Nikole, Anita just touched on it, but how is Joe Biden's campaign specifically reacting to this event?
Well, the Biden campaign did a prebuddle before the president even got on a plane to go down to Florida, not even focusing strictly on the president's environmental record, but also taking aim at his record on the pandemic and pointing to the fact that in Florida there have been some 11,000 deaths and 600,000 COVID cases. So that is how the Biden campaign is pre-butted the president's visit. But they also pointed to his economic record as well, as saying that under this president, certainly he has a record of deregulation, not keeping the air and water clean, that the president has again, opened more public lands up to drilling. So not just drilling down on the president's environmental record, but also his record on the pandemic, which of course is a theme that I think you will continue to hear from the Biden campaign. Also, as we know, of course, a former vice president is headed to Michigan tomorrow, where he will take more of an economic message, really focusing on manufacturing when he goes to Michigan tomorrow. And then, of course, you've got Senator Harris, who will be in Florida as well later in the week, who I'm sure will likely touch on the president's visit in some shape or form.
Yeah. Switching gears, Anita, the White House is set to announce President Trump's updated list of potential nominees to the Supreme Court sometime this week. Explain the significance behind the timing of this potential unveiling and who we can expect to see on this list of potential justices.
Yeah, if you remember 4 years ago, President Trump did a very unusual thing, which is before the election, he revealed a list of people that he would possibly put on the Supreme Court if there was an opening. Of course, there was an opening then. We don't know if there will be one coming up or when that will be. So he has decided to continue with that practice, and he's going to sharpen up the list that he had before. We expect him to keep some of those people that he had before. Obviously, he has picked 2 people to be on the Supreme Court, nominated 2 people who are on the Supreme Court. He has not picked a woman. There are a number of women on that list. There are actually a number of minorities, including a judge in Kentucky that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConell, who was very high on. So we expect that this list will grow. There will be women, men, different races, all sorts of people on this list. And it's very important to a lot of people that are supporting the president or want to support him. This is something that they worried about 4 years ago, that he wasn't conservative enough, that he wouldn't have these Republican principles because people didn't really know what he would be like as a politician. He wants to continue on this. This is one of his biggest accomplishments, he says, is not just the Supreme Court, but judges all over the country, that he's put a record number of judges, gotten them confirmed through the Senate, which is obviously controlled by Republicans. And he wants people to say, look, you may not like me for certain things, you may not like my style, but look, I'm going through with this and I'm doing these things that Republicans should want. This is important and long lasting. This is going to outlast him, more than 4 or 8 years or whatever his term is. This is something that could change the Supreme Court for generations to come.
Right. It's something that we've heard the president talk about time and time again, whether on the campaign trail or in remarks at the White House, just touting his record when it comes to not just the Supreme Court justices, but also, as you said, Anita, judges in the federal system. On another topic, Nikole, former FBI Deputy Assistant Director Peter Strzok is speaking out after releasing a new book called Compromised: Counterintelligence and the Threat of Donald J. Trump. Now, it details his time in the agency and the decision to investigate Russian meddling in the 2016 election. Strzok was fired after text messages he sent were leaked, which criticized several politicians, including then-candidate Trump. In an interview with our colleague Vladimir Duthier, Strzok called President Trump the most significant counterintelligence vulnerability of any U.S. president in the modern era. He also defended himself against accusations that he and the investigation team were out to get Donald Trump. Let's listen to some of what he said.
The most immediate evidence that there was nothing nefarious or improper going on is the fact that throughout 2016 that I and others knew and had information that would absolutely be devastating to Trump's campaign if it became public, and yet it never came out. Any one of us could have gone to the press, could have gone to Congress and provided information that would have absolutely destroyed his candidacy. That never happened. And in fact, to this day, there are things that I know, that others know, that aren't public at all, appropriately not known to the public, that nevertheless would harm the Trump campaign for 2020 right now if we released it. And yet none of us did that, because that's our duty. That is the oath we swore to uphold.
So this is just one of several Trump administration tell-all books painting an unflattering picture of the president. At this point in the campaign cycle, is it likely to have any impact on voters, or are their minds already made up?
I think it remains to be seen. I mean, certainly people's positions are pretty hardened, and we saw that with some post-convention polls that, basically show that, voters' positions are relatively unchanged since both the Democratic and the Republican National Convention. So to the extent that some of these tell-all books change that, again, we have to wait and see. Obviously, there are other books that came out this week. For instance, Michael Cohen, the president's former fixer. You also have a book out from the president's former press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. So to the extent that which a voter uses a book to make their decision, that's certainly one of many factors, I'm sure, that will be out there for voters.
Yeah. Well, Anita, the president continues to refute an article in The Atlantic that accused him of disparaging members of the U.S. military. On Monday, he accused Pentagon officials of being beholden to companies that manufacture weapons and airplanes. What is the latest on the relationship between the president and the Pentagon, and could his comments damage his campaign?
Well, there was some concern that they could. I mean, that's still present, but it had sort of died down a little bit. You saw the campaign and the White House really pushing back strongly on this. Sometimes they push back, but sometimes they really go all out. And this felt like one of those times where they were getting, so much ammunition to go against this article that was in The Atlantic. They have about 20 people now that say that what those comments were in The Atlantic were not true. And so they felt very good about that. And, it was the long Labor Day weekend, and it sort of had started to die down a little bit. And then, as you know, the president had decided sort of at the last minute to do a press conference on Monday where he made those comments that you mentioned. There were some people that were surprised that he made those comments. It was not something that they wanted him to do, several of his allies to do when he was already facing this issue with the military. So there were some eyebrows raised on that comment. They don't know exactly what he was referring to. The White House has now said, look, the president always has stood with members of the military. He was not referring to rank and file. He was talking about, the top officials, that they want to continue on these endless wars. And the president has, as you know, talked a long time since he's been campaigning and in office that he wants to end America's endless war. So they're just saying, oh, look, he hasn't changed his mind. He's going back to what he was. But, there has been some concern these last few days that this could damage him. This is something he's talked about for years, how much he supports the military, how much money he's tried to put in there, that he's rebuilt the military, that he wants troops to come home. This is something he's been about for 4 years. So this would really go against that if this takes off and it continues to be an issue for him.
Well, finally, Nikole, House Democrats are calling for Postmaster General Louis DeJoy to step down after he was accused of violating campaign finance laws. Remind us why he's under investigation, and how is the White House reacting to this?
Oh, well, there are a couple of issues at play here. There was a report not too long ago that the Postmaster General, in essence, when he was with his previous company, that he encouraged employees to donate to GOP candidates. And if they did, he would then give them bonuses, which would be a campaign finance violation. So House Democrats, specifically Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who oversees the House Oversight Committee, said that this would be something where certainly DeJoy could face criminal exposure potentially. So for that reason, she and some House Democrats have called for him to be suspended from his current position. And this is something that they want to take up and look at. And, as far as the president is concerned, he was asked about this, I believe, yesterday, and said more or less that if DeJoy did do something wrong, that potentially he could or should lose his job. Also late today, the North Carolina Attorney General said that this may be something that merits investigation since some of these candidates were hosted at DeJoy's North Carolina home. So look, this is just one more issue on top of the issues with the Postal Service that were already of concern to Democrats, which is why they had called him to testify before their committee And so it just kind of adds to the concerns that Democrats have, not only of DeJoy's handling of the Postal Service as far as trying to make certain reforms and delays in the mail, et cetera, but now, adding these potential campaign finance violations. Democrats strongly feel it's something that needs to be looked at, and potentially that DeJoy should recuse himself from his role or potentially step down.
All right, Nikole, Killion, and Anita Kumar, thank you both very much.